Grew up in the Air Force. My father was in the Air Force, spent 20 years there, brought home some literature about the Academy. I always say he put it where I could find it. He denies it. Had an idea of what the Academy experience was all about and had a real connection to that. Aspired to go to the Academy and certainly was fortunate to get an appointment. I can still remember the first day and being dropped off at the bottom of the ramp there. After going through line after line and getting all of your equipment, at the end of the day, being told to get my boots and put them into water to get them soaked down so that they would be more wearable and break them in the next day, only to report to my element leader that I was without boots for the day and not a strong start to my cadet career. But it was all sort of uphill from there. Having the opportunity to exercise, experience leadership that you wouldn't have in, I think, other environments is one of the advantages of going to the Academy. You know, I was fortunate enough to be selected to be the wing commander after having sort of been in leadership positions. A lot of work, a lot of additional responsibility, but certainly laid a good foundation for me as I moved on into the Air Force in subsequent years. We all learned "no excuse, sir," those 3 words fairly early on, and it's something that I talk a lot about, especially with young people. But if you have that kind of attitude that you're going to find a way or make a way, it really can shape the way you approach life and the many challenges that you will face. So I think that was one of the enduring lessons that I took from the Academy. The idea of, do you feel well prepared when you graduate? I think, at least for me, the dominant feeling was I made it, right? I'm not sure I was looking too far forward from graduation day into the Air Force, but on reflection now, certainly I think that the Academy prepared me exceptionally well. So I went to pilot training. Went to Williams Air Force Base in Arizona, spent a year there and was assigned to Strategic Air Command. So I went into the Nuclear Air Force, moved into more of a tactical experience, learning how to fly and trying to be as good as I could at flying, into a broader perspective of the Air Force through Command and Staff College. And that was a real eye-opening experience because, again, before that point, I was really more focused at the tactical level, and that started to broaden my perspective on how those tactical experiences could be employed on a larger canvas, if you will. I was fortunate to fly a lot of different aircraft. They were all special in some way or another. The B-52, I have the most hours in that, and it was the first aircraft I flew, and so I have certainly a special place in my life for the B-52. And the B-1 was probably the most enjoyable just in terms of flying. I was fortunate to fly a lot in my Air Force career. I wasn't someone who wanted to only fly. The opportunity to not do something for more than a couple of years before you were challenged with a new experience was very appealing to me. The White House Fellowship was something that I was introduced to as a first lieutenant. Knew there was no way at that point I was anywhere near qualified to apply for it, but had it in the back of my mind. And so 7 years later, when I was on an assignment to the Pentagon, decided to apply, and lo and behold was selected as one of 11 White House Fellows for the class of 1990 and 91. Was assigned to the Department of Health and Human Services. Later came back to DC in another sort of broadening assignment. I was at Tinker Air Force Base in AWACS, the ops group commander at the time, and got a call that indicated that I should go to the White House to interview for a position there. Went to report and started to work at the NSC. I was sort of the funnel. Lots of folks who were out there generating policy information. So all of that sort of filtered through me to read, staff, edit, make sure it all made sense. Not too much, not too little, not too early, not too late. Just right, just on time. So that was my job. You get a very unique perspective of the government and the world and how things operate. Learned a lot about sort of how to staff a president and how the whole policy making apparatus works. Just a very unique perspective on government. So the Expeditionary Aerospace Force concept was something that we developed back in the late 1990s timeframe. And our job by the time I got there was really to deploy it within the Air Force. So we knew what we wanted to do, we knew what it should look like, but now we had to embed it within the fabric of the Air Force and to convince, quite frankly, the Air Force and the rest of the world that what we were doing was the right way to go and was going to be a better way for the Air Force to move forward. That was one of the things I think I'm most proud of, because it's enduring in the Air Force today. It's proven itself over the test of time. When you think of the things that you're involved in that may have made a difference, that's certainly one in my career. Numbered Air Force, so went out to the Pacific for 6 years. First as the commander of 13th Air Force, which was at Guam, and then was the DO, the Director of Operations for Pacific Air Forces, and then the Vice Commander for Pacific Air Forces before getting a command to Japan for 3 years as the commander of U.S. forces in Japan. Like most people, I can vividly remember where I was when the planes hit the towers. I was on my way into a meeting. By the time I came out of the meeting, the second aircraft had hit, and it was clear that there was something more going on. So got a call that I was going to be the commander of the bomber forces and tanker forces that were going in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. It was really the first time in my career where I sort of reflected back and said, everything that I've learned about leadership to this point is going to be used in the coming days to bring all of this into some sort of an organized way that we're ready to go fight quickly. And so, within really a matter of a couple of weeks after we got there, we were flying combat missions, and again, due to the great sort of concept that had been developed to deploy forward, to bring people from different places, people being trained to do their jobs, it really made my job doable. At some point in my career, fairly early on, probably after I was a squadron commander, I realized that sort of, you ask if it's a surprise to me to command AETC, but, at some point, I figured that the only prerequisite for my next job was that I knew very little about it. But certainly look forward anytime you can to a command assignment, and obviously a 4th star came with it, so I was very grateful for the opportunity to lead at that level. AETC is just a tremendous command, and it has a tremendous influence on really everything that goes on in the Air Force, and I was fortunate to have that as my final assignment. When you had a career that spans 35 years, there are a lot of significant moments, and one builds on the other. I think the opportunity to start my career by going to the Air Force Academy certainly influenced everything that happened thereafter, and the opportunity to be in a significant leadership position was something that, again, impacted me for the rest of my career and still influences things today for me. When you're first starting your career, it's really, I think, hard to think 20 or 30 years down the line. I certainly wasn't committed to a long-term in the Air Force. And as it turned out, it was a great fit for me, and I really enjoyed it, and they allowed me to continue to serve for 35 long years, and was grateful for the opportunity. I got a call one day that the commander of Pacific Command, PACOM, an admiral at the time, wanted to know if I would be interested in doing some work with the government of Taiwan. It was really the policy that active duty general and flag officers could not go and do work in Taiwan. And so they would use retired generals and admirals to go in and provide advice. I spent 3 years advising the government there on how they could move their military forward to defend against a possible attack. Yeah, I've been involved in a number of organizations in terms of community service. Probably the major one is the United Way. As I sort of looked at, there are lots of opportunities to get involved, but I wanted to do it in a way that made sense to me. It was a really impressive list of community-minded leaders within the community, especially coming out of the military into a different setting. I thought I could learn a lot. To working with our medical foundation here locally, working with the United Negro College Fund, and helping to raise money for young men and women to be able to afford and to go to college, to continuing to work with the Academy as a member of the Falcon Foundation. The Center for Cyber Innovation, that's our class when we had our last, I think it was our 40th reunion, we took that on as a project. It's important that the Academy sort of be on the forefront of that effort. This center is going to be a really important addition to what we do at the Academy, and so I'm happy to be part of the class that's trying to help financially support that to get it built. Board of Visitors, again, there's a little bit of a theme here where you're sitting around and somebody calls you on the phone and says, would you be interested in? Of course, I didn't even have to think about that. I said, sure, I'd be honored. Served just a little over 3 years on the board, plus now I'm still on the board. I think it's important that everybody tries to give back to something in some way. And I think graduates are in a great position to help do that, and we need graduates to help do that. So I think for anybody who's inclined to do it, who knows and understands the impact that the Academy experience has had on them, they ought to consider, spending part of their time, their energy, their resources in giving back to the Academy. I think for anyone who has the honor of being named a distinguished graduate of their alma mater, it's a tremendously humbling experience. And so to be sort of included with that group of people, both who have been selected or whom I know should, very well could be selected, it's tremendously humbling. So very grateful for the honor and very humbled by it. I try to tell young people, especially who are going to go to the Academy, to remember how they feel today. Because you're going to be tested over 4 years to maintain that attitude and that forward momentum is something that I pass on to people. And to me, that's really what the Academy experience, more than anything else, is about, sort of self-reflection. Who are you? And when you come up against an environment that is going to test you and stretch you, what do you do? And everybody has to face the same test, and everybody sort of has to face themselves more than anything else is a part of that test and experience. I think most of us who were cadets look at what's going on there and wonder if we could have ever made it in, or whether we would have been successful with the talent that's there today. These young people are just unbelievably impressive, ready to go on day one as lieutenants to help their units move forward. So I'm just very impressed with what's going on at the Academy these days.